Well, I think at this moment in time, it has never been more important to invest in adult education. And to be honest with you, the future of our economy and society depends on people in the workforce and people outside of the workforce having the skills that are pertinent to the future growth in our economy that will come around again. Well, the economic arguments fall very basically down to the fact that our government has signed up to be a knowledge economy, that the future of our work, it's not going to be based on people doing the lowest quality work possible, because it's not, you just can't compete in a global environment with people who are going to undercut earnings, undercut salaries. Yeah? So the future for us is about people working and using their intelligence, using their brains. Now, we know that there are massive deficits at the moment in the economy. We know that we have in excess of 20% of the population who have issues or challenges around basic skills such as reading and writing and numeracy. We also know that we have a huge number of people in the workforce today who'll be with us in the workforce for the next 20 years, hopefully, who do not have the skills that are necessary for the needs of the economy. So, for example, we've seen a downturn in construction. We know that there is a contraction in other areas like retail, financial services, in hotels and hospitality. A lot of those occupation areas were not necessarily high skilled, okay? And there aren't necessarily going to be more jobs there in the future. So there has never been a greater need than now to invest in giving people the skills that are relevant for the future.
It really makes an awful lot of sense for the government to invest in adult learning, in my view. Well, the world has become a very competitive place, and we talk about globalisation, and we've all seen how that works. Ireland has benefited from globalisation, but we can also see the downsides. And the downsides are that emerging economies will be taking jobs from Ireland, and therefore anything that improves our competitiveness, improves our attractiveness for investment, is in our national interest. And therefore I think it's quite obvious that the wider economy will be served very well if we have a well-educated workforce, a well-informed, a well-developed workforce, because we'll be more attractive for foreign investment, and you know, everybody will benefit as a result of that.
There are many reasons for government investment in adult learning. There is the economic imperative, first of all, which is that obviously, and we're seeing it all the time in Ireland currently, the needs for skills change all the time, the needs for new kinds of work, new kinds of employment. But there are also social arguments for it. If, for instance, we think about working with mothers, the role which mothers play in the development and formation of the educational chances of their children has been demonstrated to be of enormous importance, probably more important than any other kind of intervention. If we miss the opportunity to work with that population, we're missing the opportunity to work with the new generation of children. Equally, if we think about the quality of life in a particular community, adult education can enrich it by new forms of cultural expression, by new kinds of entertainment, by new ways of gaining physical and mental aliveness and alertness, by maintaining the health of an aging population. In fact, I would think that an education approach to health and well-being for older people or for aging people would probably be far more beneficial and cost-effective than any other way we know.
Well, I think if you have a more educated, more knowledgeable society, that has to be good for the workforce. It can provide promotional opportunities, perhaps for people who need to have qualification in order to get from one level to another. So I think that can be very good for economic development as well. But I think, you know, the more knowledge, the more self-confidence, and we want to be a self-confident nation in order to progress. So I think the whole idea of adult learning can help the economy through those ways and through the personal development and opportunities that the person gets. In terms of disability, I think it's very important that a person with an intellectual disability, that their education doesn't stop at a certain age, whether it's 18 or 19, but they have that option to go on and to continue to learn, because people with an intellectual disability needs that sort of stimulus in order to give them the confidence and the self-esteem so that they can feel an integrated and engaged member of society in the same way as anybody else. So I see it really beneficial from that point of view.
Well, I think the government should invest in adult learning primarily because it gives people a second chance. People who have left school early, people who have not had the opportunity maybe to do a leaving cert, to go on to higher education. I think that education, adult education, is the context in which people would be enabled to advance to other levels. A lot of adult education, a lot of outcomes of education, it can't be quantified necessarily in terms of certification. But first of all, I suppose it enriches people's lives at a personal level and gives people a sense of power and control over their existence. And that's very important, because I have seen it myself through working with people in community groups who have not had an opportunity maybe since leaving school at 15 or 16. And once they get an opportunity for education, they actually begin to grow their ambitions, they begin to have new expectations, they begin to develop new interests in work, new interest in their community, culture, a lot of things. So I think the outcomes are enormous. And as I said, I think previously, it also matters for health. Because if you feel good about yourself, if you feel you have more capabilities than you realised, well then of course you will begin to feel better, you will begin to, you know, engage in a lot of other activities, be more confident, and all of that I think enriches society. So I think the outcomes of it at that level are considerable. And of course they provide people with employment opportunities as well.
Well, adult learning is sort of going to be a key to developing kind of, you know, our way out of the current economic mess, for example. I think a hidden return could be the fact that if mums and dads, you know, are made, improve their skills, sure, they'll be better off in their jobs. But the point is that one of the ways you stop the problem evolving is that their kids will be different. So you get this kind of, I call it kind of double whammy sort of effect. You make both the parents better off in their own right, but probably make a much bigger impact on the lives of the children. I mean, a really good example of that is how, you know, if you go back, it's only a generation or two back in Ireland that had fees for secondary school. Right? I mean, it's really, my parents left at 12 or 13, and yet, you know, I went to university and did a PhD or whatever. So it's a very different experience, and those kind of intergenerational effects can be very significant. So you know, there's a danger that people who've been left out of the kind of race feel left out in general. And so by bringing them back in, you also have this knock-on effect on their kids and a kind of a value of education and a value for learning that will really have quite profound effects on the children and indeed on society.